Welcome to Crossroads. The Chinese Communist Party is banging the drums of war yet again. Now look, outside of China, it's becoming more aggressive. In the South China Sea, it's growing more daring in its disputes with the Philippines, for example. In trade, it's aggressively trying to expand to new markets. And politically, for example, its diplomats have been on the offensive. But behind the scenes, there's a very different picture. The Chinese Communist Party is reorganizing its military, but the demand is for loyalty to the party, and this is important. The same calls for loyalty, they're being issued within the ranks of the Chinese Communist Party's leadership. There's purges going on. But even more telling, there are signs the Chinese Communist Party has a growing fear of its middle-class citizens. So what's really going on, and what's behind this new push for loyalty within the party? Well, look, we mentioned in a previous episode that the Chinese Communist Party is creating new forms of social control within the Communist Party leadership. It also has a new national security law that goes after basically anybody who questions the Communist Party. And this is in addition to new campaigns like, proposed mandatory military training for children, and the creation of military units even within some of the big corporations in China. Now, all of this is coming in the wake of a power consolidation within the Communist Party. Xi Jinping took moves last year, notably, to consolidate more power to himself. And again, this has been ongoing. It looks like he's trying to walk in the footsteps of Mao Zedong, the former, big boss of the Chinese Communist Party, and moving to become a kind of new chairman of the CCP. In other words, a supreme leader, ultimate power within the party. Now, we also now see something similar taking place within the Chinese military, as I briefly mentioned. Bloomberg said this. They said Chinese President Xi Jinping called for deep reflection from the country's armed forces at a special convened meeting aimed at ensuring loyalty and rooting out corruption in the world's largest military. And here's what they said, quote, "The barrel of a gun should always be in the hands of those who are loyal to the party." State broadcaster CCTV, one of their state-run media, quoted the Chinese leader Xi Jinping as saying. And he also said, quote, "The soil that breeds corruption should be eradicated by improving the policing of graft and supervision of senior cadres, monitoring the leaders of the military," according to this report. Now look, in addition to that call for loyalty within the PLA, the People's Liberation Army, Xi Jinping also recently restructured the Chinese military. You might remember he had the Strategic Support Force, and that was one of his big accomplishments. They just brought that to an end. They just dissolved it. Now the Strategic Support Force has been split into 3 new military forces. One of them is the Information Support Force, another is the Cyberspace Force, and another is the Aerospace Force. Now, this is important because he actually did something not too long ago when he created the Strategic Support Force, the one he just got rid of. That was back in 2015, notably. And he created that after he dissolved and disbanded what was previously known as the General Staff Department. Now, if we go back to 2014, 2015, that move was important. What it represented was that Xi Jinping was consolidating power within the Chinese military and also purging people who were disloyal to him. Some people suggested that was Xi Jinping preparing for a potential war, that he was ensuring loyalty within the leadership so they would follow his orders. Others noted it was Xi Jinping getting rid of people he deemed were his political enemies within the PLA's ranks. In other words, again, they had a big conflict between 2 different rival factions, and he was purging his rival faction. So, which side was true? Well, in reality, probably both sides have some truth to them. It was a bit of both, frankly. But there's something else now coming about that's very telling in his new reorganizing of the military. In addition to just, restructuring the PLA, as we briefly mentioned, Xi Jinping is again pushing for yet another anti-corruption campaign, this time targeted at the leadership of the PLA. And briefly note, where he has dissolved now the strategic support force and turned one force into three forces. What that essentially does is gets rid of a leadership that can command that part of the Chinese military. In other words, Xi Jinping has taken away some of the power within military cadres and brought that power onto himself. That gets rid of a consolidated military force, meaning that he now can have more direction over it, and any individual within each branch has less ability to do whatever they want. Now, Reuters noted this. They said China's President Xi Jinping said there were, quote, deep-seated problems in the Chinese military's politics, ideology, work style, and discipline. This according to state-run CCTV news outlet, right? And this is notably amid an ongoing military anti-corruption purge. I'll get into why that's important in a moment. But they said this is Xi Jinping, quote, there must be no hiding place for corrupt elements in the army. And he said this allegedly at a military political work conference this week in northwestern city of Yan'an, the founding stronghold of the Chinese Communist Party. And he added, quote, cadres at all levels, especially senior cadres, the top leaders of the military, must show up and have the courage to put aside their prestige and expose their shortcomings. And that has Cultural Revolution era connotations when what they called self-criticisms were a big thing. Everybody had to expose why they were not loyal enough to the Communist Party, and that nature of exposing their shortcomings is in line with that type of culture as well, something the CCP was doing when it was trying to gather power to itself. And Xi Jinping said as well, quote, they must deeply self-reflect, make earnest rectifications, resolve problems at the root of their thinking. So aligning themselves with party thinking and party loyalty while criticizing themselves for not being loyal enough. And she also vowed to, quote, enrich the toolbox for punishing new types of corruption and hidden corruption. Now, what are these new types of corruption? What is hidden corruption? Well, we're not really being told. Presumably it has to do with, again, what we're talking about, that this is also a purge of people who are disloyal to the party, or a purge of people who she maybe deems as maybe part of a rival faction, or not, again, totally in line with what he wants. This is a purge, in other words. And he also said they want to strengthen the supervision of senior cadres, suggesting what we've been talking about before. There is growing distrust within the Communist Party. There's paranoia. Xi Jinping does not fully trust these individuals, and he wants to monitor them and force them to come out and confess to things that are, again, party-related crimes. Now, on this note, the anti-corruption campaign has a lot deeper implications as well. Xi Jinping previously used the label of an anti-corruption campaign for factional disputes within the Communist Party. We've talked about it before. Xi Jinping was having a kind of battle within the CCP with what was known as the Jiang faction. The Jiang faction was again, party leadership faction of former CCP leader Jiang Zemin, who's now dead. Jiang Zemin rose to power through the Tiananmen Square massacre. He was also the person who started the persecution of Falun Gong. The Jiang faction had kind of a pay-to-play system where you had to get blood on your hands as a way of rising through party ranks. Under his case, it was participating in the persecution of Falun Gong. Xi Jinping notably had his own faction. They did, for the most part, not get involved in the persecution at the time, but they had their own things as well. Neither faction is technically good. Both factions had their issues. Both factions were completely communist, but they, of course, had fundamental disagreements over what was really a power struggle over who was controlling the CCP. In the end, Xi Jinping won, and he imprisoned, executed, and so on anybody who was under that faction, at least tried to find them at least. And he did that under the slogan of anti-corruption. He wasn't purging his rivals, he was just rooting out corruption within the Communist Party. Hint, they're all kind of corrupt. So you could use that label to go after just about any of them. Now look, what's interesting is that Xi Jinping is now turning this campaign against the military again, and notably against senior cadres, the leaders, monitoring them, again launching investigations for corruption, hidden corruption and new types of corruption as he's calling it, and also encouraging them to come out and criticize themselves for not holding enough party loyalty. But the Chinese Communist Party has another focus. Recent programs are also targeting the wealthy people in China and actually causing a lot of them to leave the country. Now, I'll be talking about this more after we come back from a quick break.
Experts agree. One of the best ways to protect against financial uncertainty is to diversify your portfolio. Learn how physical gold and silver can secure your retirement funds from today's economic challenges with a gold IRA from American Hartford Gold. You can safeguard your wealth with no penalties or taxes when you transfer your current qualifying retirement accounts. Call now and our precious metals specialists will send you a free information kit, no cost or obligation. American Hartford Gold, a trusted industry leader with an A+ from the Better Business Bureau, has a 5-star rating from thousands of happy clients. Whether you are getting physical precious metals in a gold IRA or delivered to your doorstep, we offer only the highest quality gold and silver. For your peace of mind, we also offer a no-fee buyback commitment, a low price guarantee, along with free shipping and free insurance. So don't wait. Call the number on your screen today and secure your financial future.
Welcome back. The Chinese Communist Party is making a new interesting ban. It's going against people for flaunting their wealth. Now, look, recent programs are targeting the wealthy people in China, but the focus is not necessarily going after these people. It's making new rules against showing off their wealth, of flaunting themselves, right? And in light of this, some of the wealthy people are just fleeing China altogether. It seems there's also more to this, though. It looks like the target of the programs, again, going against wealthy Chinese, that they're not technically against wealthy Chinese people at all. The real focus, it appears, is the middle class in China. And it suggests that as life is becoming more difficult in China for the average person, the Chinese Communist Party is trying to quell any possible revolt from among the country's middle class. First, on wealth flaunting, here's what it looks like on the surface. Reuters reported that China's richest people are avoiding flaunting their wealth in favor of more discreet fashion, according to a report published on Tuesday by Bain Consultancy that predicted the weakest global luxury market since the height of the pandemic. And they said, quote, "For the first time in history, at least modern history, right, because the CCP was very poor before, we have in China the so-called luxury shame," Bain partner Frederica Lovato said. And they note that in an environment of unemployment, social and economic crisis, the wealthier Chinese who have resumed traveling have shifted their spending outside of the mainland. Now, look, it should be noted, this is not the first time in history the CCP has done this. When the party was rising in power, again, between like the 1940s and roughly like the 1980s, late 1980s, they also discouraged flaunting of wealth. In fact, if you were wealthy or whatever else, you could be deemed a party enemy. They were purging the wealthy. They were killing the landlords. They were going against anybody who stepped outside of a hardcore communist system. And they, of course, changed that only under Deng Xiaoping when he had the reform and opening up because they're trying to get foreign trade deals. The CCP is reversing a lot of that now, and they're going back to a more cultural revolution type China, a Mao era type China. But what's interesting with this, the wealth flaunting, is that it's not limited to just, this kind of cultural revolution era. It seems that there's also a built-in concern about maybe perception, maybe about social unrest related to that perception. Now, look, what's really important with this development is that the wealthy people in China are not just making these decisions themselves. It's not like they're just saying, I don't feel like showing off my wealth anymore. This is because the Communist Party has a new directive on this. They're being told they can't do it. NBC News said this in May. They said China's Cyberspace Administration, the national internet regulator, announced a new campaign last month against influencers who, quote, create a wealth-flaunting persona deliberately showcasing a luxurious life built on money in order to attract followers and traffic. Now, they note that it is far from the first time Chinese authorities have tried to police the internet, which is heavily censored in China, to combat social trends seen as undesirable. They note that in 2022, officials issued a code of conduct prohibiting live stream anchors from displaying or hyping a large number of luxury goods, jewelry, cash, and other assets. And they note that China is experiencing an economic slowdown that has hit the middle class especially hard. Young people in China, they say, are also struggling in an intensely competitive job market, with some of them choosing to, quote, lie flat, that's the name of a new movement they have, and withdrawing from society or seeing content creation on social media as the only viable career. They're giving up hope, in other words. Now look, this is a big shift. The Chinese Communist Party used to really support this type of thing, people flaunting their wealth and the promotion of this. And why is that? Well, it's because when people flaunt their wealth, it makes it appear more desirable. When people go on social media or Chinese TikTok, whatever they go on to, and they see videos of influencers showing things off, that presents a lifestyle that they themselves would like to achieve. Now, normally, if you have a society with upward mobility and people believe they can achieve that, they tend to like it. They tend to want more of it. And that's actually why a lot of it does well. It presents this type of image that is attainable. But when the CCP wants people to build the wealth of the nation as well, it wants people to make others chase it. This was something the CCP wanted to promote on its end because it made people pursue wealth. It made people aspire. It made people reach out to do bigger things. It made them want to start businesses and find ways to make money. But now, for some reason, this is changing. The Chinese Communist Party now no longer wants that image. It no longer wants wealthy people flaunting that persona. And it no longer wants that image being shown abroad, which previously was a big part of CCP propaganda, in fact. If you're in China and you're a student, you have slogan class and you have to repeat party slogans, one of them being, there'd be no new China without the Chinese Communist Party. A way of saying, of course, that China is becoming more wealthy and the party is to thank for this. So why would the CCP change that? It seems that the CCP is really afraid right now of the middle class of China. Now, we talk about why the CCP is afraid of them and also how the China dream is being brought to an end. It's going to be only on EpicTV.com, though. So if you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, X, Rumble, click the link below and come and join us on Epic TV. Epic TV is the uncensored streaming platform of the Epic Times. And with your subscription, not only will you get access to the rest of my show, but also to many great premium reports, great movies, hard-hitting documentaries that we have on issues that I think really matter. Now, before we go exclusively to EpicTV.com, I want to show you a trailer from my documentary, The Final War, which exposes one of the biggest threats to this country, the Chinese Communist Party. Now, in this documentary, I expose the CCP's 100-year plan to defeat the United States, and also, what it means for America if they were to succeed. This infiltration and subversion by the Chinese Communist Party is one of the biggest but least understood issues that we have. And of course, this is something that impacts the future of America. If you want to watch this documentary, you can find the link in the description below. It's called The Final War. And just a quick note before we go exclusively to EpicTV.com, I'll be away all next week on a vacation, so we won't have a show. I'll be back with brand new shows for you, though, on Monday, July 1st. Thank you so much for your support. I'll see you on Epic TV for the rest of this episode.
The greatest threat facing the United States is the CCP.
The Epic Times investigation team had studied the CCP for years, but what we uncovered was yielding evidence beyond our imagination.
With Chairman Mao, with the Prime Minister, our talks have been characterized by frankness.
The Clinton administration said, oh, don't worry about it. This will be a poison pill for China.
China's strategic goal is to make sure that the U.S. has 4 enemies, and one of them must be a terrorist group.
We are giving of our life's blood so that the Chinese Communist Party can survive and thrive.